You see, the problem is this. We identify in our experience a differentiation between what we do and what happens to us. We have a certain number of actions that we define as voluntary, and we feel in control of those. And then over against that, there is all those things that are involuntary. But the dividing line between these two is very arbitrary. Because, for example, when you move your hand, you feel that you decide whether to open it or to close it. But then ask yourself, how do you decide? When you decide to open your hand, do you first decide to decide? You don't, do you? You just decide, and how do you do that? And if you don't know how you do it, is it voluntary or involuntary? Let's consider breathing.
Welcome to Ignite the Spark Within, a podcast designed to do just that, ignite your spark within you. I'm your host, Sarah Malone, owner of Spark Fitness and Lifestyle Coaching and voted Yahoo Finance's top 10 female coaches to follow in 2021. I believe everyone has a fire inside them, a powerful purpose, a story waiting to be told, and everyone can uncover and unleash this power. Every day you have the choice to either let your experiences shape you or take control and use your experiences to shape the world around you. You were made to experience happiness, freedom, joy, purpose, love, passion, and abundance. Disrupt the status quo, think for yourself, and join forces with those around you doing the same. Join me for thought-provoking conversations along with the strategies needed in order to help you ignite your spark within. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am so excited for today's guest. I am joined today by a man named Mark Wooding. Many of you probably haven't seen his face, but you may have seen his Instagram and his YouTube channel, which has almost 2.5 million subscribers on YouTube and almost 200,000 followers on Instagram. He specializes in basically creating, I don't even know how you would say this, Mark, but it's art in the form of sketches, animated sketches, and it's all based around, ancient philosophers and Stoics and using their wisdom to showcase that in an artistic way, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And I have so many questions about that. And then about also just your own knowledge and resource pool as well. So thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I'm a fan of all the things that you're doing as well.
Oh.
And I guess to sum it up, what I do, I call it animation, but it's technically not really animation. It's a whiteboard animation where you're recording yourself drawing on a whiteboard, and then you're speeding up the footage to match audio. But the nothing itself is actually moving. All the images are static. So it's technically not animation. It's just, recording yourself creating. But I think that's kind of half the fun for the audience, is they get to kind of like watch their creation unfold. And they're, a lot of people are not reading learners, they're not audible learners. They're kind of a mix of many things. So I'm trying to combine as many different mediums of learning as possible, where I'm writing the thing, you're hearing it, you're seeing a creation unfold, and you're almost experiencing it happening for yourself, because you can kind of feel that you're the one drawing it. So you combine all those 4 techniques of learning into one, and it makes it really easy to digest the information.
And very addicting. So I didn't mention this earlier, but the account is called Afterskool, you guys. Afterskool 100 on Instagram, and then Afterskool on YouTube. And I'm going to link all of these things in the show notes. But that must be why it's so addicting, because you're playing on different learning patterns. Like there's the auditory, the visual, the kinesthetic learner, and you're really touching on all of those. So I right off the bat,
that's kind of ironic, because a lot of the videos I make are about how to break addictions and bad habits. And then you're telling me that the videos are addictive, but I guess that's good.
Well, it's good in the fact that, well, I think what you're doing though is you're touching on a bunch of also human needs. So simultaneously, while we're getting that visual, and let's be real, if we're going to be digesting content online, rather be something that can allow us to grow. And so you're also touching on a couple of the human needs, like growth. There's everyone is different, but it's also the same. So people that have heard me talk about the 6 human needs know that that's certainty and also variety. And so you're really bringing something that into a space that could be detrimental for people and usually is, and bringing some type of value.
What are those 6 human needs?
Okay, so the 6 human needs are love and connection, is significance, certainty, uncertainty, or variety. So because we need something different too. And then the 2 spiritual needs would be growth and contribution. And so basically our top 2 human needs are usually our driving force, and they're what drives all of our behaviors and actions.
And I'm guessing everybody has a different arrangement of what they prioritize. And if you prioritize certain things at the top, you're going to be oriented in a very nice way.
Yes.
And I think I've heard something similar to this. And, if you're prioritizing like certainty at the very top, you're going to be kind of living in fear quite a bit.
Just I want to make sure. Hold on. I want to make sure your voice is getting captured.
Testing.
Okay. Wonderful. Perfect.
We're good.
Yeah. I mean, well, and here's the thing is it depends on how you're getting those needs met. So if your number one need is significance, and then you've been conditioned in an environment of how to get that need of significance met, like say dealing drugs or robbing a liquor store, well, you're going to feel very significant, but you're not doing it in a productive way. Whereas you have somebody like an Instagram influencer, or even yourself, and I wouldn't say that this is significant so much for you, but this seems more like contribution. And in some way, it's got to be getting another one of your needs met, of how you're meeting your needs to deliver this in such a way. It's significance, but it's also contribution and a little bit of love and connection, and your skill set is being used.
Yeah, I have a bit of a
productive way.
I have a bit of a paradox or a complex within myself where I want my work to have a huge impact on the world, but I also don't like attention on myself very much, which is funny because I've gotten into like astrology a bit lately and psychic readings and whatnot. And I got a reading and they were like, wow, this is an interesting paradox because you really like want to make a name for yourself, and your work is going to be known all over the world, but you really don't want attention at all. That's kind of odd. This was before I started the YouTube channel.
I've noticed that about you. So just a little background story for my listeners is we met on a retreat in Arizona with Brandon Powell crew on a breathwork retreat. And I could attest to that. You really stay in the background and you're pretty quiet natured. But yeah, like when I hear you talk and when we were conversing, it was so obvious that there's a level of work that you've done and desire to contribute to the world in an impactful way. And I sense a very ancient spirit in you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Like you're young, but there's a seasoned approach to you. I can't really explain it, but I'm sensing that's why you've gravitated towards the people that you've gravitated towards. Ram Dass and all of these ancient Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, even Jordan Peterson is, he's relevant today, but these are the ancient forms of wisdom that you've gravitated towards putting out into the world. So I have to ask you, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it you started diving into these people first and then combined your passion for art later, or what came first?
Well, one of the things that has helped me a lot, and maybe this is why you saw that I was an ancient spirit. I know on the internet now we get so much unsolicited information. We're just bombarded with stuff that we didn't even ask for. But I've kind of done a good job, I think, of ignoring a lot of the noise and actively seeking out advice from people that I really look up to, like people who have kind of been there and done that, who I really admire. And I make a very conscious effort to get in touch with them and then get advice from them. So there's all these people that I really look up to, like Paul Stamets, for example. I'm really into mushrooms. I want to get in touch with Paul Stamets. And when I do, I want to ask him all these questions. And, I think you get a lot out of that, out of actively seeking for advice, rather than, like all this unsolicited information is really 99% of it is useless to your life. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's why I come across as like an ancient soul, because a lot of the times I'm seeking out information from much older people who have kind of already been through it. If there's that saying, if you're not in the arena, your opinion doesn't really matter.
Yes.
So,
I love that.
Yeah. I'm not going to take romantic relationship advice from somebody who's never been in a relationship.
Yeah.
But maybe somebody who's been through a couple of divorces, I'll say, what happened? And then I'll, learn from that.
Or someone who has a thriving relationship.
True.
Yeah.
True. Like a lot of times I'll post things from somebody who's been through a lot of issues in their career or their life. And you always get this comment: why would I take advice from this person? They had a drug problem. Or why would I take advice from such and such? They had a really colored past, whatever. And I'm like, those are the people that I want to take advice from.
Absolutely.
Who've had experiences, like
the key word there is had.
Yeah. Like Mike Tyson. I did a video about Mike Tyson, and everybody was like, this guy's a convicted criminal. He's not smart or whatever. And I'm like, no, this guy's been through everything, and he's come out an enlightened person. And that's the one I want to listen to the most.
Well said. I almost have nothing to add to that, other than people wonder why, this concept that you've taken of actively seeking out the wisdom from experienced people. It doesn't even have to be age related, just experienced people who have somehow figured out something that you don't have in an area that you desire to have it. And instead of what I'm finding is so many people being worn down with just whatever's coming in their peripherals, they're taking it in subconsciously. And it's a mass hypnosis is what I'm seeing in a way that is so accelerated and somewhat scary. But then, like, on the flip side, for your account, what I'm finding, and you'll have to tell me if I'm wrong, but the surge in desire and like a craving, almost like a thirst for enlightenment and higher consciousness. And, like you said, you're getting into the psychic readings and the spirituality part of what's going on in the world right now. To me, I find very encouraging, and everyone else sees darkness, and there is that, but the purpose of the darkness is creating something really beautiful that I see. And so have you noticed a surge in your content being consumed?
Actually, I've seen the opposite happening over the last year. There's been a steady decline. I think the algorithms maybe just aren't favoring me. I keep getting messages like every day saying, I know I'm subscribed. I hit the notifications bell and I don't see your videos anymore. And, I'm not going to complain. I'd never want to victimize myself. If YouTube kicked me off, or if Instagram shadow bans me, whatever, I'll go to some other platform, or I'll make my own platform. It's like, to me, it's their loss. If they're going to hide my account, it's like, okay, Instagram, you guys don't make anything. You're just an empty platform. Mm-hmm. If you're going to suppress like people working really hard to make good creations, then that's silly.
I think they don't care at this point. I mean, they make so much money on other things that they would much prefer their agenda being pushed on that platform than having. So I agree with you. I've been suppressed massively on that platform too. And so I'm just trying to figure out other ways. And to be honest with you, the best impact you can have really is the day-to-day real life impact on just the few people that you're in contact with. And I think that I've started to shift my focus there, and it's helped me a lot. But YouTube wouldn't make sense because they do make money, and from advertisements and viewers and things of that nature. So I find that pretty interesting.
It might just because there's so many more creators now. Like when I started my channel, it was I feel like it was a bit less competitive. if you started your channel in like 2010, you'd probably be a pretty big YouTuber by now, regardless. But there's so many people making content now. I think there's like hundreds of years worth of content uploaded per day. And it's like, obviously humans can't go through that and review it. So they have to use algorithms.
Yeah.
And the algorithms are kind of clunky. YouTube, I'll give YouTube credit. Like, they actually have humans that work there and get in touch with you, and they do a much better job than Instagram. Instagram is just like a very dumb algorithm that if you say any hot button word that the algorithm catches, regardless of like the context, it'll just shut your thing down.
Yep. Yeah,
So,
and you can't get in touch with a human. Okay, so let me ask you this. How did you get into all of this whiteboarding and because I didn't know that it was like a bunch of still shot. That is so much. That has to take you. How long does it take you to create?
it takes,
I have your YouTube up right now, and the top one is like the most recent Ram Dass one is like 14 or 19 minutes long. How long would something like that take you to create?
well, I'm getting faster and faster, and I can do one of those videos in about 2 weeks. So I put out a video every 2 weeks, which is about as fast as I can create them. But in the old days, maybe
Man, that
6
is
years
crazy.
ago, a 15-minute video would have taken me like 6 weeks.
Wow. I just want everyone to like digest that, because that is commitment. I was making a joke a long time ago about Mount Rushmore. I went to visit Mount Rushmore, and I make a stop there. My family lives in Montana. So when I drive out there, I always make a stop at Mount Rushmore, and I just awe at it, because you got to think about the persistence and commitment to a single vision that would take to create that, like however many years that took to carve that. And I would bring that same concept into what you do. Like, it's taking you 2 weeks to get a 15-minute video out there. That's amazing.
Well, I heard some crazy stat. I don't know if this is true, but I think over 90% of the content we consume was created on that day, within 24 hours. 90% of the content being consumed was created on the day that it's being consumed.
That's kind of
where
weird.
I kind of have a different philosophy. Like, I'm making my videos, I want them to last forever. I want it to be like an archive or something that you can always go back to, and the videos are timeless. And it's kind of like what you're saying with Mount Rushmore or the pyramids. Like, if there was a giant catastrophe and everything, humanity was wiped off the face of the earth, what would survive? The giant monuments that we worked decades to build, like the pyramids. All the cars would rust away.
If we did in fact build those.
All the servers, all the plastic would be gone, everything. Like, if you look at a car that's been parked in front of somebody's front yard, like a hillbilly front yard with a bunch of rusty cars, those cars are like, in 20 years, they're gone. But something like the pyramids, that's like this giant edifice that just stays there forever. So that's what I'm trying to create my own pyramid. Not a pyramid scheme.
Well, that's a very big difference. But that's interesting, because you're also taking the work of men who have done that. Their work is timeless. Their words are timeless, and we're finding them resurfacing. So I just find it fascinating and very captivating that you've married these two concepts of this long form creation, which is very beautiful and extremely talented. You guys have to check it out. I'm going to link it all here. But and with all of these brilliant minds. So do you study each of these men as you're creating, or have you been studying them for quite some time now, and you found your favorites and now you're putting it to the art form?
Well, I never want to limit myself to anybody. So I'll pick out anybody that I find to be interesting, from a comedian to like a scientist to an ancient philosopher. I'm down to cover it all. And I never wanted to be like pigeonholed. That's kind of why I called it Afterskool, because it's such an open-ended name that you can talk about anything. Like, the last video was from Tim Dillon, comedian, and the whole thing was meant to be funny, but it had a lot of truth bombs in there. And then the one before that was about Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison's like visions of the future. So two dramatically different topics back to back. So I never wanted to limit myself in the topic. And to answer your question, I don't do a ton of research before I pick a topic, but I kind of like, I watch all their interviews or I go through their book. If I really like it, then I'll proceed forward. And yeah, it's not a super rigorous vetting process.
But it's cool because as you're doing this, you're also learning and growing so much.
Oh yeah.
Because every time you create something new, you're also, you're also taking in that knowledge from them in order to create it. And what, I don't remember who said this, but if you really want to learn something, teach it. I think that was maybe Albert Einstein, actually. So that's kind of what you're doing without even realizing that you're doing it.
Yeah. There's another quote. I'm going to butcher it, but the best teachers don't tell the best teachers don't tell their students what to see. They show them where to look.
Oh,
I like that one.
That's good.
And so that's kind of one of the things with Afterskool that I've tried to embody is I don't want to preach. I don't want to tell anybody this is the way you should live, or this is how you should eat, or this is the way, I don't want to give them like a direct protocol to follow. I want to kind of like lay out ideas, and if they get inspired by it, great. But I don't, the term influencer kind of like, it makes me cringe.
Yeah.
Because like the whole idea is like, if you're trying to influence somebody, that's not influence. That's like you're forcing your ideas on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to just do things that literally just inspire me. And if it helps other people, great. It's kind of like a very selfish take on things, but it's also selfless.
I was just thinking the paradox of that is that it's actually extremely selfless. And you were talking, and I was thinking about something when you were speaking that.
That always happens.
I know it's now it's right out of my head, so we'll have to circle back to it. But have you found one particular, or maybe we'll take it era, because it's almost impossible to choose a favorite. But is there one particular era or area that you've gravitated towards as being one of your favorites?
That's a good question. Something happened in the 1960s that is interesting. There was a lot of freedom popping off in the 1960s, and there was some crazy, just revolutionary ideas. I think that kind of went hand in hand with us going to space and the psychedelic revolution happening. But people that seem to have lived through the 60s have these really cool ideas, and I like when they talked about that era. I
wonder, now that you're talking about that, is the ideas are correlating with the psychedelics.
Perhaps.
Because that would make sense to me. And now we find ourselves in a recycling of the area where psychedelics are coming back up again. What is that? So that was in the 60s. So that's 60 years later.
Yeah. Then the war on drugs started in the 70s, early 70s. And then you had 50 years of no psychedelic research, and it was demonized. So that also kind of goes hand in hand with us not really going to space anymore. Our space program did the opposite of expand. It, went backwards. And we all have this assumption that, technology just advances on its own.
Continues to go forward. Yeah.
But that's not the case,
I agree with you. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they said about how much progress we've made and how much innovation we've made. And I said, do you think so? Because I feel like we've gone, in terms of being sufficient and I think well-rounded as a society, I think we've gone backwards because of the use of technology in some ways. Have we advanced in some ways? For sure. But
yeah, I think maybe the wrong things have been incentivized. Like right now, the best technology is used to capture your attention and get you to kind of be distracted and be in this like state where you're numb and you're not really like conscious, but that's what's being incentivized. So the best technology is like, what can like make you waste the most time, basically.
Yes.
But if the best technology was dedicated towards making you the most productive, or we'd be living on other planets right now. Sometimes
I wonder if we're not already in some way,
living on other planets.
Yeah. And it's just not presented, it's just not public knowledge.
I'd love to know that.
Me too. My mind gets curious the same way that yours does. I do remember the thought I was going to say, and it is important because what I was noticing about you is that what a true leader does is they do not need to be out in the limelight and out front and center. And so that's why I was excited about this show, so that people could see your face. Because if you look at your content, you would have no idea the man behind that. And to me, that's a true leader or trailblazer in some way. You are your trailblazing in some ways, because you have no agenda other than expanding yourself and then putting a certain frequency out there, because it is a certain frequency that you're putting out there in hopes of expanding others. And that to me is a servant and selfless leader. So I wanted to make sure that I said that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that a lot.
I know you're going to be like, it's stop, the limelight.
And that means a lot coming from you. I mean, you're crushing it. Your workouts, your motivation. That means a lot coming from you.
Well, I think you and I share the similar value and mission on doing our part in our timeline here on Earth. And I also feel ancient. That's why I connect with that in you. But I know that we were put here on this time for this specific purpose. And it's like, while most people are kind of shutting down and succumbing to the distraction and the fear and sucking the energy, life force energy, literally right out of them, somehow you and I have found a way to become more energized in this. And I personally think that it's just our assignment, and we recognize that, and we've accepted the call. We've just said yes.
Yeah, I think there's something deep within us that is primal, where we want to feel our body. We want to feel the earth. We want to, there's something about if you do jujitsu or something, wrestling with a guy, it feels kind of good. You're like, afterwards, you're like, that felt like you're kind of zenned out, and you can be in traffic afterwards and somebody will honk at you and flip you off, and it doesn't faze you at all. You're just, okay. And I think that it's important to test yourself and get in touch with nature and face adversity. These things are crucial.
This reminds me of a Stoic quote, and I can't quote it exactly, but the concept was that if you're just an athlete, you're just a strong brute force, basically. And if you're just a student or a philosopher, then you just have all this knowledge. But if you're an athlete and a student, then you're a force to be reckoned with. And that was horribly butchered, but that was the synopsis. And I think that's what we have found for ourselves, is that it's the balance between grounding here on this earth plane and then also looking up for expansion to help others do that.
You just reminded me of one of my favorite Jordan Peterson quotes. He said, a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control.
Yep.
And I thought about that because that quote hits you, and it says a lot, because, if a bear walks by you and it doesn't do anything, you said, oh, that was a nice bear. But if a little bunny hops by and doesn't do it, you don't say, oh, that was such a good bunny.
It was just the bunny doing the bunny thing.
I think what Jordan was getting at there is that to be good, you have to also be capable of like defending yourself and protecting and being strong and dangerous, but not using that, but using that for good. That's way more impressive than not being able to do anything and then not doing anything.
That I would like to take that one level deeper and say, and we've probably heard this more recently, but one cannot fully know the light unless they have been in the dark. And so I take Jordan Peterson's quote to be kind of like that, is a man or woman, just humanity, who has gone to the depths and the levels of darkness and then made the conscious choice to choose light in that, even when he knows he has an alternative method that is, I think, the test of and the strength of humanity at a macro level.
Exactly. If you have a choice between good and bad and you choose good, that's noble. But if you can only choose good, if you can only choose then that's okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is, wow. This got deep quick, because I really think that's the whole, I think there's one big question I think a lot of people ask. And if God is good, then why did he create darkness? And why did at the dawn of creation in the Garden of Eden, was there a temptation? And I think it comes down to what you just said, because if there were no option for sin or for darkness in any way, then that wouldn't be love at all. That wouldn't be, like you said, noble at all. The whole test of humanity, it's like this one big giant adventurous game to say you're surrounded by temptation of darkness and evil all the time. And that conscious choice of choosing light, choosing God, choosing you is the heaven. It's the consciousness. Yeah. It's the conscious man.
Well, this is a very popular ancient philosophy. You hear it forever, but it kind of talks about when you have paradise, you kind of want to destroy it. Like once you get a utopia, you have to start smashing things. Dostoevsky, he was a Russian author. He wrote about this. When you have, if you're just sitting in warm pools eating cake, you do that for about a week, and you're going to start smashing things. And I think you see that in big time in our society right now, because if you looked at history objectively, we're living in the best times ever. Yeah. We have access to tons of food. If you're, in most of the world, we have internet, electricity, running water, all these things that 100 years ago they didn't have. So we're living like kings would have lived 100 years ago, but yet all you hear about is how terrible things are. And I think we're kind of like those people in the warm pool with the cake, where it's just like, and this ancient philosophy kind of like lines up really well with our anatomy and our neurotransmitters. I've been doing a lot of looking into dopamine system.
Yes.
With Andrew Huberman, did a video with him.
Just going to say, you should listen to Huberman if you haven't on dopamine. It's good.
Yeah, I did a video with him and his colleague, Dr. Anna Lemke. And so we did like 3 videos on dopamine in a row. And they all talked about kind of the same thing, is like dopamine we thought was associated with reward, but that's incorrect. It's actually associated with motivation to get the reward. So there was a rat study that Andrew Huberman talks about this a lot. There was a rat study and the rats could still feel pleasure if they don't do anything. Sorry, I'm explaining this. Sometimes my mind goes faster than my words. I get it. And then I'm like, slow down. So I get it. So they put rats in a cage, and if they had dopamine, they would have enough motivation to pull a lever and get food. But if they took out the dopamine in their brains, they had no motivation to even pull that lever. And they could still feel pleasure. They could hand them the piece of cheese and they could still feel pleasure. So it's not dopamine's not the pleasure thing. It's the motivation to get the pleasure. And so what's happening now, Andrew Huberman talks about this, is we're living in this world where it's super easy for us to access dopamine, where you get dopamine from watching TV, from your phone, from ordering DoorDash. It's so easy that why would you do anything? You don't have any dopamine to get off your ass and like go do something hard. If you're sitting there eating pizza and you got soda in your hand, you're not going to run 10 miles to get pizza and soda. You're just going to order it on DoorDash.
Oh my God. But okay, so you're speaking, and same thing with you. My mind is going, it's like deciphering through all of these things and how I can immediately say chaos, because there's 2 things that come to my mind when you're saying that. Is it's the process, it's the striving for, it's the pursuit. It's always been the pursuit. When without a pursuit of something, what happens to man? We die. We need something to pursue. And you take away all of those obstacles. I said the same thing a while ago too, after listening to, I think it was Jordan Peterson, but with the use of technology, in some ways, this is why I see regression in a lot of ways, because of technology making everything so easy. We don't have any problems. So then we create our own problems to have, because we need something to like fight for or fight against. And otherwise we're depressed without a pursuit or a passion or something to fight for and fight. That's why people are feeling so alive right now. And they're starting to stand up for things that they're like, I don't even know why I'm standing up for this, but let's create a movement. Yeah. Now we're creating all of these movements just because we don't have any. It's giving you a little bit of meaning. If you get attached onto a movement, it also gives you an excuse not to do anything too. Because you're like, I can't work on myself until this thing is fixed. It's like, all right. That's so true. That's so true. It's like a level of distraction. What happened there? It's like a level of distraction to keep them from going inside, which I think was part of the number one problem with what happened with COVID anyways, because as soon as we got shut down, people were faced with that number one person, the man in the mirror. And most people had been avoiding it for so long that when you get faced with that demon, the demon being you've got two options. You could do the work, or you can run and hide and cope in some way with alcohol or whatever else a form of madness comes through. Yeah, it's funny when the pandemic first started, I noticed a lot of beautiful things going around. People had 2 weeks to reflect, and the whole world slowed down. Everybody took time to consider what was most important and prioritize. And it was nice for those first 2 weeks, maybe because we all thought we might die. But then we kind of woke up to, all right, the reality of things, and then shit hit the fan. Well, and I think the reality was more so, if you've seen society go through actually a process of grief. And Andrew Huberman also does a podcast on grief. And you can see it through this pandemic experience. It was like almost a sense of denial, like, okay, just wait it out and wait for life to go back to normal. And then we go through, and then you see all the other ones, and then we get anger. And now it's like, okay, let's just sit back for a second and check out the steps of grief and see where we are. Let's just see how long we have to go through this. Because we lost something, or we think that we lost something. We lost an old way of living. And now we're in this state of unknowing of what is this whole thing going to look like now. And people are either disheveled, or they're, for the first time ever, finding their meaning and their purpose. I'm finding. Well, I'm just thankful for the people that wear masks in their car still. They're saving lives. Hey, the world needs heroes, Mark. The world needs heroes. Yeah. Okay, so for yours, so you were doing this far before all of this. Yeah. The pandemic. How long have you been doing this for? So I've been animating for 12 years, probably. And then I started the channel exactly 6 years ago on July 24th, 2016. So right before the election. It was kind of a crazy time as well. But I had been doing freelance for quite a few years, and that was going really well. Like I was getting bigger and bigger clients. The paychecks were getting nicer and nicer. I was living up near Silicon Valley and kind of in that whole tech world. And I was like the tech artist. I'd go to, I did jobs for LinkedIn, Intel, Facebook. Wow. I even worked on the inside of Facebook for a little bit. Wow. And, things were pretty good, but I just got burnt out on doing the same kind of corporate, watered down, you're really not creating for yourself at all. You're trying to make one person or a couple of people happy. And my mantra during that period was just get it done. The name of the game is just get it done. And then, I could have been doing that for the rest of my life, just doing freelance videos. But it took a catastrophic thing to make me so uncomfortable that I was like, I'm going to go in a different direction. And at the time, I was very bitter and upset about that issue, but it turned out to be the greatest thing ever. So like chaos on one level,
is harmony on a greater level.
Yeah.
You know, inside my body right now, there is like a literal war between my immune system and viruses and whatnot. But I'm sitting here talking to you.
Yeah.
And on a greater level, we've got turmoil in the streets, people are fighting, division, whatever. And on a greater level, the earth is just sitting there smiling. Okay.
And coming back to equilibrium or homeostasis in some way.
Yeah. So it's kind of about like zooming into very close perspective and zooming out to very far perspective and kind of trying to see things from all different levels. And
that's very interesting that you say that, because that's literally what your animations are. You know, when they're unfolding and I'm watching them, you see something that's really small and simple at first, and all of a sudden it's becoming this very elaborate, massive, detailed picture. And then you go back in, and then it's like you come back out, and it's a whole story, just the animation itself. You take out the words and everything, you look at the pictures that you're creating, and it's like, it's so cool to see the macro and the micro, like you just said, the zooming in and the zooming out. So I love that. And I am curious about the catastrophic moment, but if you don't want to share, you do not have to share.
Yeah, I can share it. And so in 2016, I got contacted by a presidential candidate for the United States, 2016 election. And, you know, I stay out of politics, but this was a good paycheck. And I was like, you know, if I don't do this, it's not like the project's not going to get done. They're just going to go to the next artist. So me taking some moral stand is not going to affect anything. And I had that mantra, you know, just get it done, just get paid. So I took the job on very short notice, and it was super accelerated. And long story short, I didn't get paid. They didn't use, I was kind of basically robbed. I worked really hard. They tossed out the project and didn't pay me. And I was like, you know what? Okay, you just compromised your values for what? You got nothing out of it. Why don't you change course and harness this energy? Just give yourself 1 year. I kind of have this other mantra, give yourself a year to do something big. Because a year is like, it's a good amount of time where you can fail and like get back up again, but it's short enough where it's urgent. You know, if you give yourself a 10-year deadline, you can sit around for 9 years and do nothing. And be like, I still have time. If you give yourself 3 weeks, that's too fast, you know? But a year to me is like the perfect amount of time where you can accomplish a lot in a year.
I think people underestimate. I just have to write that down because that was gold. That was really, really, I think people should play that back, what you just said. That's just you setting your own targets. I have to say that was one of the biggest blessings, because it moved you into the space that you're in now to create and really be your own. You're sovereign now. You're free. Yeah,
it pushed me into the unknown, and it was kind of a blessing to be in the unknown, because in the beginning of YouTube, you're making videos about anything, like literally anything, and you're just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I had a goal to get 100,000 subscribers in a year. And 6 months in, I was creating a video every week. I was literally getting no views, no subscribers. And 6 months in, I kind of hit a wall, and I was like, am I really going to go back and do another video for nobody and have absolutely no, you know, you're not making any money. You're saying no to all these paying customers. Are you really going to keep doing it? And I was like, wait, you gave yourself a year. Hold yourself accountable. You're 6 months in, you still have 0 subscribers. Or I had like a couple hundred subscribers. I'm like, you're not even 1% of the way to your main goal of 100,000 subscribers. And the year is half over. But I was like, no, 1 year, keep going. And pretty much at like 11 months, a couple of videos took off. And literally on the year, I hit 100,000 subscribers, like literally on the day. And I was like, okay, this is like my new career.
Wow. What a story.
Yeah. So I was experimenting around with so many different topics. In the beginning, you'll see like my topics are all over the place. And one of the things early on that I was doing that was a mistake, but I think you kind of have to do it as an early creator, is I was looking to see what was working on the internet, you know, what was in demand. and trying to replicate that.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, but I was like, oh, people want to hear about wealth disparity, make a video about wealth disparity. Or there was a very heavy anti-capitalism sentiment during that time, 2016. So a lot of my videos were kind of condemning capitalism. Where now we're 5 years later, 6 years later, a lot of my videos are condemning socialism and Marxism. It's kind of funny. So
It's true though. I mean, you have to do your research and just to get the train rolling, get it going down the tracks. I find that fascinating and very persistent too. And
Thank
the
you.
perfect hero's journey.
Thank you. One of the cool things about YouTube, it's like a double-edged sword, is you can't just sit on what works and keep doing that forever.
Yeah.
Like as a YouTuber, you'll have a video that goes viral and you'll go, aha, I'm going to make that same exact video over and over again. And I'm going to keep going to this well and pulling out water. YouTube's kind of interesting in a way where you can't do that. You can maybe do that 2 or 3 times before, but every time you see a diminishing return. So maybe it's the algorithm, maybe it's God, I don't know, but it's always challenging you. Maybe it's the same thing. It's always challenging you to like go like, it's always challenging you to go into the unknown and push yourself farther. And every time I've pushed myself, it's paid off.
Okay, let me ask you this, talking about dopamine then. Don't you find that process of what you just said, that's your dopamine hit?
I think so.
It's like every time you put something out and it's like, is this going to hit? And then it hits and you're like, okay, back to square one again. Every time you go back to the drawing, it's a blank slate.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get addicted to that, right?
It is addicting. And I have I've noticed in myself that it's all about momentum. Like so I do a project every 2 weeks. And so like I'll start a project and it's very slow in the beginning. I'm like, okay, what am I working on now? Like, oh, this, okay. And I'm like, okay, just get started on it. Once you get started on it, like things are very slow. And then by day 2, you're like, okay, I know what I'm working on now. By day 3, you're like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. By day 4, like that engine's like running. Mm-hmm. And then by like, once you get like past halfway on the project, like you're just a machine. You're just like,
you're in the flow.
And like someone's like, hey, come to my birthday. And you're like, no, I got to do this.
You know what that reminds me of? There was actually, he talks about the hero's journey, and his name's going to escape me right now. He's a very famous author, and he wrote a book, and of course it's
Joseph Campbell.
No. But he talks about resistance. It's going to drive me nuts. But he's a very famous author. He's written so many books. I'll have to circle back on that one. But he talks about that resistance and this is a very similar what you just described as an author's. And I'm in the process of writing a book right now, so I can relate to that. When you sit down, every time you sit down to write or to create, you're like, I don't even know where to start. I just gotta, and that moment right there is so crucial, because the first 5 minutes is just bullshit. It's like, what I'm writing right now is not even going to be in the final draft. This just sucks. And then it's like, but you push through that. Most people would be like, I don't know, writer's block, I'm going to walk away. But when you push past that, then you get into this flow, and all of a sudden things just start hitting. And now all of a sudden you're like not even there anymore. It's just coming through you. And that's what you just described, that flow state where you're just like, no, don't bother me. Like I'm flowing right now. It's an experience. Like you almost become the observer of what you're doing.
Well, it's kind of like you with fitness, right? Like you didn't just wake up one morning and be fit like you are now, right?
Right.
Like that took momentum. Like when you come across somebody who hasn't worked out in years, I wouldn't tell them, hey, you need to like work out for 6 hours a day.
Right.
No, that person just needs to do like literally one push-up, or just they need to walk like 50 yards.
They just need to
go to the
gym. Yep.
And that, the first day they walk 50 yards, then the next day they walk 100 yards, then the next day they jog 200 yards, and by 6 months in, they're living in the gym and they're loving it. But you just got to get that. At first, that wheel is very rusty. It's like this old crank, and you just got to get it to like budge 1 inch or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing that you found in your YouTube creations. You hit that year mark, and then something happens, and I like to call it exponential growth or exponential progress. Because once you hit a certain point of that momentum being created, it's like a domino effect. All of a sudden, you've just stacked up all these dominoes, and stacking up the dominoes, you're like, this is bullshit. I'm not getting anything done. And then all of a sudden, you go back to that beginning point, and someone hits the domino, and now the whole thing is just rolling. And so that's, I think, what separates like you from someone else who's trying to achieve something. It's the utter commitment and resilience to your vision that sees it through.
It's like if you build it, they will come. Kind of. I remember when I first started YouTube, I was talking to people that worked at YouTube, and I was like, what's the secret? How do you build a channel? How do you get a following? And every one of them always said consistency. Big creators that I got in touch with, people that worked on the inside of tech were like, you got to be consistent. And I just found that to be very not sexy advice. And I was, you want some cool tip that's just going to like hotwire success or like launch you to like stardom. Everybody wants that instant gratification. Yeah. Saying be consistent is so boring and dull, but it's true. Like,
that's just a shove off comment.
And I was like, in the beginning, I was like, all right, you know what? I guess they're right. So I'm going to upload a video, same time, same day, every week, every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And it's kind of weird doing that when you have no audience, because you're like putting the video out at this like same time, but then you get like 2 people watching and you think that's nothing, but those are your most important viewers ever. The first 2 people that subscribe. Like there's this video I love. I show it to a lot of people where there's a guy dancing in a park, and he's like in his underwear and he's kind of crazy, and somebody's just filming him and he seems like a crazy guy. And then some like really drunk guy joins him and starts dancing. And that in that moment, the guy in the underwear starts like grabbing his hands, and they start like having a great time together. And he really like pays attention to the drunk guy that joined him, kind of validating that his decision to join him was right. And then another drunk guy joins him, and they're just like obliviously having a great time. And then in no time, like 10 more people start, and they have like a dance party. And very soon, the people sitting around them on their like picnic blankets are kind of like looking, and now they're feeling weird for not being the ones dancing. At first the guy in the underwear was weird. And then it hits this like mass effect where it hits this point where like, if you're not dancing, you're the weird one. Yeah. And literally within like 30 seconds, there's the most massive dance party happening. And it's so cool to watch this video. It's literally like 2 minutes long, and it starts with a crazy guy alone. And 2 minutes later, there's this huge mosh pit of people just like going crazy. And, I think you can get a lot of lessons from that video. Like, how do you create that? How do you create a big dance party? Well, you got to really give love to those first people who start to support you, because they're taking a big risk. They're like, they're going against the crowd to support you. Once you have like 100,000 followers and you get one more, it's not, you can't possibly pay attention to that new one. But in the beginning, you really have to give love to those first people that come into your circle.
Wow. Well, first of all, I know 1,000 people are going to go and look up that video now, myself included. But I feel like that piece of advice can expand to literally every single service area that we have. So it doesn't matter what you're doing or who you are serving. I feel like what Mark just said, it can translate into anything really. And that's That's true, because it's a bigger risk that you're taking when nobody else is making that move, whereas it's easy to follow the crowd. So last question for you would be then, what is next for you? Is there a bigger vision that you have, or are you just riding this out right now?
Well, I'm pretty much riding this out, but I think that a big opportunity will come rolling by, and I will seize that opportunity when it does. Kind of like how Joe Rogan built up this very authentic, natural thing, and then he transitioned to Spotify. I'm not saying I'm leaving YouTube anytime soon, but I'm a little worn out by the censorship. So I know that at some point there will be an opportunity to create my own platform, create my own school, or get involved with some organization that I'm really into. And when that day comes, I will take that opportunity. I'm always going to be making videos, and I hope to always put them out there for whoever, but I'll be on whatever platform allows me to do that.
I almost wonder if you would be teaching in some way, this form of art.
That would be cool. Randall Carlson, right?
Oh, I do.
Yeah, he said he's starting a school on a couple thousand acres, and I'm really interested in that school, and I'd love to help out with it.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
That's going to be awesome and epic.
Yeah. Wow. That's how I met Brandon Powell, and that's how I met you. I went on a Randall Carlson tour, and we toured the Scablands of Washington. And I feel like that is such an amazing way to learn. I probably learned more in that 1 week tour than I did in all my years at college. And, you get firsthand experience, when you look at a river, the way Randall Carlson's explaining it, you're learning all this math and geometry, and you don't even realize it. He's saying, how fast is the flow going up there? And then see how it slows down. Let's calculate how much it slows down in this area. We got to measure how wide it is. And I'm like, wow, we're learning so much math that's applicable here.
Yeah, this is exactly it. So I have clients that are in Canada, and their school system that they have their kids in is just like that. Well, probably not that deep because it's for kids, but they take the kids outside. They only spend 2 hours in the classroom per week. The rest is outdoors. It's real hands-on learning. And I feel like that is, if he's creating a school like that, I would like to be a part of that too, because I had my own idea of creating a school, more of a spiritual school, like a Hogwarts per se. But because people need to learn how to use their spiritual gifts too. But the best learning experience is that hands-on, when you're out there in the trenches doing it. So what are we doing in the classroom?
Indoctrination.
Yeah.
To
the pipeline. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we functioned for thousands of years without school. School is a pretty new thing, especially a government-run school. So yeah,
just interesting to think about. Well, Mark, I am so honored to have you on my show and just to be connected with you. If you could give my listeners one piece of advice, I feel like I already know what it is. I shouldn't have been asked this question. What would it be?
You already know what it is?
I think so, because you just talked about it in length.
Well, then I had to think of something different.
Wrong.
I was going to say, do something hard every morning and have priorities, not goals. If you have priorities, everything falls into place very easily. So if your priority is to be fit, don't wake up in the morning and look at your email. Go out and work out first thing in the morning. If you look at your email and check your phone, it's going to be noon and you haven't worked out yet. So if you set priorities, everything becomes very simple, and you'll find you have lots of time to do the things that you want to do. If you have goals, you're always running around doing things and you're going to get really busy.
So good. That's so good. Mark, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And for everyone that was listening, there is a lot of content here. a lot of resources. I'm going to be posting the links in the show notes for everyone to Mark's Instagram, his YouTube. And then I would like to also include the link to that video of the dancing party, because that seems like it would be.
It's a great video.
Yeah, I think that'd be good to watch. So thank you so much. And until next time, guys, I'll talk to you very soon. But thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Ignite the Spark Within. If this podcast brought you value, or you think it would bring someone else value, please hit that share button. My mission is to reach and help as many people as I possibly can, and you just never know who could use that one good piece of information. And hey, if you have any topics, discussion questions, or ideas for future episodes, you can reach me directly at sarah@sparkflc.com and just write podcast in the subject line. And if you haven't already, please rate the podcast on your favorite podcast channel. This helps bring awareness to the show. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you're alerted for all future episodes. Please go ahead and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And if you're interested in pursuing coaching for yourself, you can visit sparkflc.com for more information.